Hello everyone and welcome to week 8 of our Introduction to Literature class. This week we're finishing up the play Proof by David Auburn. We're reading Act 2. There's a discussion assignment and a reading quiz that go along with that act. And just looking over your discussions from last week when we read week 1, I saw a number of people that made some really insightful and interesting comments about the characters. I wanted to talk a little bit about the themes that we're going to finish up this play with. And then even some interesting instances where these themes are expressed. As you know, a theme is a big idea about life. You wrote about theme a couple weeks ago with a short story. And there are a number of themes in this play. I talked a little bit about them last week in the video. Just to review, in this play we see the idea that math is a beautiful subject. That math can have beauty like paintings, like sculpture, like a sunset, like art, that it can be just as interesting and as beautiful as those other art forms. This is a hard thing for me to access personally, but I know it's out there. I have mathematician friends who swear by it, and I think we see characters in the play that would say it's true as well. One instance of that is the interesting number that comes up in the Act 1, Scene 1, 1729. 1729 weeks. It is the only, and I gotta get my book out for this. It's the smallest number expressible as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. 12 cubed plus 1 cube equals 1729, and 10 cubed plus 9 cubed. Catherine says, yes, we've got it. I think here we see just the idea that a number can have fascinating properties to it, especially if you're a mathematician, especially if it's something that you study. And in this case, it's even linked with Catherine's depression. It's the number of hours, or is it weeks? Let's see. 1729 weeks. Number of weeks that is connected to how long she has wasted her time and how she's swimming into depression of A, I think, having to give up her life to take care of her father, and B, as we learned at the end of Act 1, Scene 1, to deal with her father's death. Another interesting beautiful math moment is when we hear about Sophie Germain and germain primes. Germain primes are a special kind of prime number. A prime is divisible by 1 in itself. So 5 is only divisible by 1 in itself. It makes it prime. Germain primes occur when you take a prime, double it, add 1, and get another prime. So 5 doubled is 10. Add 1, we get 11. That means 5 is a germain prime. And these are even more special, they're more rare, they're more infrequent. And there's something that Catherine knows a bit about because she knows the highest germain prime. They talk about this, her and Hal, in Act 1, Scene 3, after the funeral. Prime numbers, I find to be an interesting thing to think about when we talk about this play. Again, that prime number idea is a number that's divisible only by itself and 1. They're rare. They don't occur frequently in the number world. And I think this might be true also of math geniuses. They're rare, they're infrequent, and they're fairly special numbers. Just like they're fairly special individuals. Prime numbers might be connected to Robert and his math abilities. Not only is it something that he learned about, but it's also something that might come to represent him. And Sophie Germain, certainly when we hear her description as she was trapped in her house, the French Revolution was going on, the terror. She had to stay inside for safety, and she passed time reading her father's study, the Greeks. Later she tried to get a real education, but the schools didn't allow women, so she wrote letters. She wrote to Gauss. She used a man's name, Antoine Auguste Leblanc. She sent him some proofs involving a certain kind of prime number. Important work. He was delighted to correspond with such a brilliant young man. Dad gave me a book about her. Catherine likes Sophie Germain. And considering what we find out at the end of Act 1, that Catherine may have written this extraordinary proof about prime numbers, that description of Sophie Germain comes to mean a little bit more. Catherine was trapped in her house. Instead of the French Revolution going on, the terror is going on, her father's mental illness. And she might even be, I think she's allowed to go to school, certainly. This isn't a time when women can't go to graduate school for math. But even Hal kind of brings up the point that there aren't a lot of women in the field, and that when Sophie Germain is brought up, he thinks he's met her at Stanford at some conference. Catherine might be facing some of those similar obstacles in terms of people believing in her math ability. Not just as somebody who hasn't gone to school, but as somebody who's a woman in a field dominated by men. So I think we see a couple instances there of math being beautiful and the math culture, the math world. We learn a little bit about that in Act 1, Scene 3 from Hal as well, about these conferences that people go to and the behaviors that occur at them. The genius insanity divide, we talked about that last week, that not being so far apart. In fact, when you're reading Act 2, listen to how Robert describes how his mind works, how it's on fire, and how he's making connections between different things. Some of that is math, some of that is outside of the world of math. These things get blended into play, and I think David Alburn is trying to make us ask the question, how far apart are genius and insanity? In this play, I don't think they're that far apart at all. Loneliness, the isolation of being a genius, we see that with Robert. We certainly see that with Catherine. She is completely alone. She's not connected with her sister. She's not connected to anybody really on the outside world. Only her father and her have this little kind of place where they live, and it's very isolating for both of them, I think. That's a product of mental illness, but I think it's also a product of math and an inability to find people to talk to math about. Inheritance, what we inherit, I think we see a couple instances of that in the play. The house, where is the house going to end up, who's going to get that, and then what is Catherine inheriting from her father in terms of both abilities in math, but also perhaps disabilities in her mental health. And then finally, Claire and Catherine. I have one word for you if you want to think about what their relationship is like. It's a great word. Jojoba. 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 We hear about it in Act 1, Scene 2. Claire's talking about a product she buys for her hair. It makes it soft and smell good and look great. And they get into this argument about jojoba, whether or not it's a chemical, whether or not it can be an organic element, even if it's a chemical. In that moment, I think we see that Claire loves products, and she bases her life on new things she can find to buy. And Catherine has a deep intelligence about things, and also isn't scared of showing off her sister about how smart she really is. And I think we see that in that discussion of jojoba. There's a couple other interesting things as well that pop up in that discussion that kind of define who Claire is and who Catherine is. Moving into Act 2, the big question, did Catherine write the proof? And I'm excited for us to find that out. The movie diverges in this part of the play significantly. And so make sure you're reading the play, not just watching the movie. I mentioned this in the announcements. I got a few emails about the audio for the recording not working. I've tried to resolve that, and it works on my computer, which is an Apple computer and uses QuickTime. If you don't have QuickTime, I don't think you can actually listen to the play. But I've posted a YouTube video of a performance of the play. I gotta say, it's not the best, but it is the performance. It is the play. It is a performance. It is the play, and if you want to actually watch the play as you're reading along, it's a good resource for you. Alright, I hope you enjoy the rest of this play. Next week we'll be starting Winter's Bone, our novel, and we'll be working with that for 3 weeks. You're halfway through the semester. Congratulations. 8 weeks done and 8 weeks to go. All the best this week. I hope you're doing well, and stay safe. Take care.